7:10 in the morning. The Persian Gulf. A Tomahawk Block V cruise missile cut through the humid salt air at 500 miles per hour. This was not a combat launch. It was a scheduled test of the latest guidance software. The Pentagon expected a routine splashdown in international waters. They did not expect the missile to start talking back in a language it was never taught. The morning sun was a pale orange disk hanging over the Iranian coastline. Below the missile, the water was a deep and oily green. 200 miles to the south, the U.S.S. Carney tracked the flight on its Aegis radar system. The mission was simple: fly the designated track, perform 3 evasive maneuvers, self-destruct at the final waypoint. It was a showcase of American precision and a warning to anyone watching the horizon. The weapons control officer on the Carney watched his screen. The digital icon for the Tomahawk was steady and bright. Suddenly, it flickered. The altitude reading jumped from 500 feet to 10,000 feet in a single second. This was physically impossible for a subsonic cruise missile. The officer checked his terminal for a hardware fault. Everything was green. The software was not just failing, it was being rewritten in real time. The weapons officer spoke to the tactical action officer. "Sir, we have a logic disagreement on track 714. The TAO stepped closer to the console. Confirm? Is it a sensor ghost? Negative. The missile is responding to our pings, but it is reporting coordinates that do not exist on our charts." The TAO looked at the primary display. His face was grim. "Verify the encryption keys. Now, I want a status update on the flight termination system." "Sir, the termination system is non-responsive. We have lost command link." 40 miles away, inside a reinforced bunker carved into the cliffs of Bandar Abbas, a different set of screens told a different story. Iranian technicians did not look worried. They were not wearing headsets. They were watching a high-definition feed from a camera that should not have been accessible. It was the optical seeker of the American Tomahawk. The image was clear and terrifying. It showed the deck of the U.S.S. Carney from 5,000 feet. This was the culmination of the Persepolis Protocol. Years of studying wreckage from previous cruise missile strikes had led to this moment. The Iranians had not just copied the wings and the engine, they had mapped the digital soul of the weapon. They had discovered the one back door that the American engineers believed was sealed behind layers of hardened encryption. The room in the bunker was silent. Only the hum of cooling fans broke the air. A senior officer stood behind the technicians. He did not give a command. He simply watched the screen. He saw the American destroyer turn. He saw the panic in the sensor sweeps. The technical balance of the Middle East had just shifted. On the radar screen of the U.S.S. Carney, the icon for the missile suddenly stabilized. It stopped jumping. It stopped flickering. It turned toward the Iranian mainland with a grace that was not in its original programming. The Tomahawk did not explode. It did not crash. It flew into the rising sun like it was going home. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 7:15 in the morning. The coastal bluffs near Bandar Abbas. Inside a mobile command vehicle, the air was cool and smelled of ozone. The Iranian electronic warfare team sat in a row of glowing terminals. Unlike the busy combat information center of the American destroyer, this space was calm. The lead technician adjusted a frequency slider on a glass touch panel. He was not looking for a radar signature. He was listening for a heartbeat. The technician spoke into his headset. "Command. The handshake is complete. We have full control over the primary logic gates." A voice crackled back from the central bunker. "Confirm. Can you access the inertial navigation system?" "I am in the system now. I am feeding it a simulated terrain map. The missile believes it is flying over the mountains of Nevada. It has no idea it is 10 miles off our coast." The officer in the command vehicle stood behind the technician. His name was Colonel Reza. He had spent 10 years studying the wreckage of Tomahawk missiles recovered from the Syrian desert. He knew every bolt, every circuit board, but the software had always been a mystery until now. They had spent months building a digital twin of the American flight computer. Today was the first time they had tried to override a live unit in the air. Colonel Reza tapped a screen. "Change the heading. Bring it to 300 degrees. Let us see how the Americans react to their own weapon turning its back on them. The technician typed a sequence of commands. On a separate monitor, a map of the Persian Gulf showed the missile icon. It made a sharp 90-degree turn. It was a maneuver that would have ripped the wings off an older model. But the Block 5 was resilient. It banked smoothly, its jet engine whining as it accelerated toward the Iranian mainland. 7:25 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the U.S.S. Carney. The atmosphere had shifted from confusion to controlled crisis. The tactical action officer stared at the primary display. The Tomahawk was now a vampire, a hostile contact. It was heading straight for a restricted Iranian air defense zone. If it crossed that line, it would be seen as an act of war. But the Americans couldn't stop it. The TAO turned to the electronic warfare officer. I need a high-power jammer on that track. Flood the GPS bands. If we can't control it, I want it to go blind and crash into the sea. The electronic warfare officer shook his head. Sir, we are already at maximum output. The missile is ignoring us. It is not using GPS for navigation anymore. It is using an internal reference that we cannot reach. How is that possible? The TAO asked. That software is encrypted with 24-bit keys. The keys don't matter if they have the lock, sir, the officer replied. It looks like they are not jamming the missile. They are talking to it. It is treating the Iranian signal as a higher priority command than ours. The captain of the Carney entered the room. He did not sit. He looked at the screen and saw the distance closing between the missile and the Iranian coast. 12 miles, 11 miles. Send a message to the Iranian Coast Guard on the bridge-to-bridge radio, the captain ordered. Tell them we have a technical malfunction. Tell them we are attempting to recover the asset. And get me a direct line to 5th Fleet Command in Bahrain. We need to tell them that the Persepolis Protocol is no longer a theory. It is happening. On the Iranian side, Colonel Reza watched the American ship on his radar. He saw it beginning to turn. He saw the frantic electronic signatures of their jamming equipment. It was a desperate attempt to regain control. He smiled. They are trying to scream loud enough to drown us out, Reza said. They do not realize we are already whispering in the ear of their soldier. The missile was now 5 miles from the coast. It began to descend, dropping to 50 feet above the water to hide from long-range radar. It was a ghost in the machine. The radar on the Carney blinked. The track was gone. The missile had disappeared into the sea clutter near the Iranian cliffs. Track lost, the sensor operator called out. The captain looked at the empty screen. It didn't crash, they just took it. 7:30 in the morning. 5th Fleet Command in Manama, Bahrain. The admiral stood before a wall-sized digital display. The room was bathed in blue light. Reports from the U.S.S. Carney were being verified by 3 different intelligence desks. The situation was unprecedented. A Tomahawk missile had been diverted. It had not been destroyed. It had been stolen in flight. The admiral turned to his chief of staff. I want eyes on that coast. Launch the Triton from Al Dhafra. I want every sensor on that drone focused on the last known position of track 714. The chief of staff nodded. The Triton is already spooling up. We will have a feed in 12 minutes. We are also repositioning a Global Hawk for high-altitude signals intelligence. Warn the Iranians, the admiral said. Tell them we are conducting a search and recovery mission in international airspace. If they interfere with the drone, we move to a higher state of readiness. 7:38 in the morning. The edge of the Iranian Air Defense Identification Zone. An MQ-4C Triton drone climbed through 15,000 feet. Its long, slender wings carried a suite of the most advanced cameras and electronic listeners in the American inventory. Inside a control trailer thousands of miles away, a pilot moved a joystick. The drone banked toward the Iranian cliffs. The infrared camera scanned the white-capped waves. The pilot spoke into his headset. Control. I have a thermal signature near the shoreline. It is inconsistent with a crash site. There is no debris field, no oil slick. Copy, the controller replied. Hold your orbit at 20,000 feet. Do not cross the 12-mile limit. 7:42 in the morning. A concealed hangar inside the Jask Peninsula. The heavy steel doors slid open with a low groan. Inside, A sleek, delta-winged aircraft sat on a hydraulic rail. It had no cockpit. Its skin was a matte charcoal gray. Designed to absorb radar waves, this was the Zolfaqar-S. It was the result of a decade of research into stealth and autonomous flight. Colonel Reza watched the video feed from the hangar. The American drone is in position. It is looking for its lost toy. It is time to show them that the sky is no longer theirs to watch. A technician checked the telemetry. Engine start. The Zolfaqar-S is ready for rail launch. All systems are green. Launch. Reza commanded. The interceptor roared to life. A solid fuel booster ignited, kicking the drone off the rail with incredible force. In 5 seconds, it was traveling at Mach 0.9. It climbed steeply, its nose pointing directly at the circling American Triton. 7:45 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the U.S.S. Carney. The radar operator leaned forward. Sir, new contact. Designate as Bogey 1. High speed. Emerging from the coast at low altitude. It is climbing fast. The tactical action officer checked the vector. It is heading straight for our drone. What is the classification? I cannot classify it, sir, the operator said. The radar cross-section is tiny. It looks like a bird 1 second and a fighter jet the next. It is maneuvering at 12 Gs. The TAO felt a chill. 12 Gs would kill a human pilot. Whatever was coming at them was not manned. Warn the Triton, the TAO ordered. Tell them they have an inbound interceptor. Break orbit and return to base. Now, the American drone began a slow, heavy turn, but the Zolfaqar-S was already there. It did not fire a missile. It simply pulled alongside the Triton, matching its speed perfectly. The pilot of the Triton stared at his monitor. Control, you are not going to believe this. The interceptor is right on my wing. I can see the serial numbers. They are written in English. The morning was no longer quiet. The escalation had begun. 7:50 in the morning. Over the Persian Gulf. The Triton pilot stared at his high-resolution monitor in a control room thousands of miles away. The video feed showed the Iranian interceptor just 10 meters from the American drone. It was a terrifying sight. The Zolfaqar-S was sleek and needle-thin. It did not have a traditional engine exhaust. Instead, a shimmering heat haze distorted the air behind its delta wing. The pilot adjusted his controls. He tried to bank the Triton away, but the Iranian craft mirrored his every move with mechanical precision. The pilot spoke into his headset. Control. The interceptor is maintaining a close formation station. It is not responding to international distress frequencies. Its skin is made of a composite I have never seen. It looks like the surface of the Tomahawk we lost, only smoother. The controller responded. Confirm. Are you seeing any visible weapon pylons? The pilot zoomed the camera in. Negative. No external missiles. No gun ports. But it has a series of glass-covered apertures along the leading edge of the wings. They look like optical sensors or high-energy emitters. It is staying exactly 3 meters off my port wing. 7:54 in the morning. The Iranian mobile command vehicle. Colonel Reza watched the synchronized flight on a large tactical screen. The Zolfaqar-S was performing perfectly. It was not using a pilot. It was being flown by the same reverse-engineered logic that had captured the Tomahawk. The Iranian team had integrated the American flight control algorithms. The result was a machine that understood the American drone better than the American pilot did. Colonel Reza looked at his lead technician. The Americans are trying to turn. They are testing our response time. Activate the secondary handshake. Let them know we can see through their encryption. The technician nodded. Activating the electronic tether. He pressed a sequence on his glass console. A blue light pulsed on the technician's display. This was the first aggressive move. It was not a physical strike, but a digital one. The Iranian interceptor began to broadcast a high-power signal. It was a handshake request using the stolen American codes. 7:58 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the U.S.S. Carney. The tactical action officer looked at his terminal. Sir, the Triton is reporting a massive internal system error. The drone's flight computer is receiving commands. It is trying to override the pilot's inputs. The captain of the Carney gripped the edge of the command table. What are our rules of engagement? Can we lock onto that interceptor? The TAO checked the digital handbook. Under current rules, we cannot fire unless fired upon. The interceptor has not used a kinetic weapon. It is performing an electronic intercept. If we fire a missile, we are the ones starting the war. It is stealing our drone in international airspace, the captain said. His voice was hard. That is an act of aggression. Signal 5th Fleet. I am requesting permission to transition to a hostile intent posture. We need to get that interceptor away from our asset before they land it in Tehran. A pause. The room was silent as they waited for a response from Bahrain. The radar operator broke the silence. Sir, the Admiral is on the line. He says we are to maintain a defensive stance only. We are not to engage unless the Triton is physically struck. 8 o'clock in the morning. The situation in the sky changed instantly. The Zolfaqar-S did not wait for the Americans to decide. It suddenly accelerated, pulling ahead of the Triton. Then, it performed an impossible maneuver. It flipped its nose 180 degrees while still moving forward. It was now flying backward, staring directly into the Triton's nose camera. The pilot's voice was frantic over the radio. Control, it is right in front of me. I am seeing a laser warning. My sensors are going white. It is blinding me. The Iranian interceptor emitted a focused burst of electromagnetic energy. It was a digital punch. On the screens of the U.S.S. Carney, the Triton's data feed turned into a wall of static. The icon for the drone began to drift. We have lost the feed, the operator called out. The Triton is no longer responding to our commands. The captain looked at the blank screen. They didn't just blind it. They took the keys. 8:10 in the morning, the Northern Arabian Sea. The peace of the morning was shattered by the roar of 4 F-18 Super Hornets. Launching from the deck of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln, the carrier strike group was no longer maintaining a distance of 100 miles. Under direct orders from 5th Fleet, the entire group began a high-speed transit toward the Strait of Hormuz. The message was clear. If the Iranians did not release the digital tether on the American drone, the response would no longer be electronic. Inside the Combat Direction Center of the Abraham Lincoln, the Admiral watched the tactical plot. Tell the Carney to close to 5 miles from the 12-mile limit. I want them to put their hull between that drone and the Iranian coast. If that interceptor tries to lead the Triton into their territorial waters, the Carney is to block the path. The Chief of Staff leaned over the table. Sir, the Iranians are responding. We are seeing massive activity at the Geshem Island Naval Base. 8:15 in the morning. The Persian Gulf, the U.S.S. Carney, was vibrating as its gas turbine engines pushed the ship to 30 knots. On the bridge, the captain looked through his binoculars. On the horizon, dozens of small, white wakes were appearing. They were not waves. They were boats. The captain turned to the bridge wing. Sound general quarters. I want the 5-inch. Gun manned. I want the phalanx systems in surface mode. We are about to be crowded. The alarm for general quarters began to wail through the ship. It was a rhythmic, piercing sound that sent hundreds of sailors to their battle stations. In the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere was frozen. Every screen was now filled with tiny red triangles. The radar operator spoke, his voice tight. Sir, I have 40, 50, 60 high-speed surface contacts. They are emerging from the coastline, bearing 045 through 090. They are splitting into 3 separate groups. 8:20 in the morning. The Iranian Coastal Command Center. Colonel Reza stood before a panoramic window. Below him, the swarm was in motion. This was the asymmetric response. While the Zolfaqar-S held the high ground in the sky, these fast boats held the surface. Some were manned by the Revolutionary Guard. Others were empty, controlled by the same networked intelligence that had captured the Tomahawk. A technician reported, "The American destroyer is accelerating. They are attempting disting to intercept the Triton's flight path. The Abraham Lincoln has launched its air wing. They are 4 minutes from the zone. Colonel Reza did not look away from the window. Launch the second wave of drones, not interceptors. I want the suicide variants. They do not need to attack. They only need to hover. Create a wall of steel between the Carney and our prize. 8:25 in the morning. The sky and the sea were becoming congested. Above the water, 12 small Iranian suicide drones climbed to 500 feet and formed a circle around the Triton and the Zolfaqar-S. Below them, 80 fast boats moved in a pincer movement toward the U.S.S. Carney. The American pilots in the Super Hornets looked down at the scene. One pilot spoke. To the Carney. Guardian 1. This is Raven 4-1. We are over the top. We have eyes on the swarm. They are inside 2,000 meters of your position. Rules of engagement are currently yellow. Do not fire unless they commit a hostile act. The captain of the Carney responded, Raven 4-1. Copy, but they are closing the gap. If they get any closer, I will not have time to react. Suddenly, every screen in the American Combat Information Center turned red. A new signal had appeared. It was not a boat. It was not a plane. It was a submerged contact moving at 70 knots. The sonar operator yelled, Torpedo in the water. No. Correction. It is too fast for a torpedo. It is something else. Both sides had now committed their most advanced assets. The tension was at the breaking point. A single nervous finger on a trigger would start a war that neither side could stop. The morning was no longer quiet. The spark was a second away. 8:30 in the morning, the center of the Persian Gulf. The air was thick with the scent of jet fuel and sea salt. The U.S.S. Carney sat at the epicenter of a digital storm. On the primary radar display, the world was a chaos of red icons. The 80 fast boats were now within 1,000 meters. They were moving in a high-speed orbit, circling the American destroyer like wolves around a stag. The sonar operator's voice was a sharp blade in the quiet room. The submerged contact is accelerating. 60 knots. 70 knots. It is a supercavitating craft, bearing 080, range 2,000 meters. The tactical action officer turned to the captain. Sir, we have a weapons lock from the swarm. They are painting us with fire control radar. Do not fire, the captain said. His knuckles were white. If we fire, we are finished. They are baiting us. Hold the line. 8:30 and 30 seconds. Inside the Iranian command bunker, Colonel Reza watched the countdown. It was not a countdown to an explosion. It was a countdown to a total system synchronization. On his screen, the American Tomahawk, the captured Triton drone, and the Zolfaqar-S interceptor were all linked by a single pulsing line of data. The technician looked up. The American Super Hornets have their master arms on. They are locking our fast boats. Let them lock, Reza said. They will not pull the trigger. They are waiting for us to blink. We are not going to blink. 8:30 and 45 seconds. The U.S.S. Carney's automated defense system, the Phalanx, began to track the incoming submerged contact. The robotic gun mount moaned as it slewed toward the water. It was a mechanical reflex. The ship's computer saw a threat. It wanted to kill it. Bridge. CIC. The TAO shouted into the internal comms. Override the Phalanx. Do not let it engage. I repeat. Do not engage. Sir. The operator replied. The submerged contact is at 500 meters. It is too fast. If it is a torpedo, we cannot stop it. 8:30 and 55 seconds. The Super Hornets roared overhead, dropping flares to distract the Iranian infrared sensors. The sky was filled with magnesium light. Below, the fast boats began to zigzag, throwing up massive plumes of white spray. The American pilots had their fingers on the launch buttons. The Iranian boat crews had their hands on the missile rails. The distance between the submerged contact and the hull of the Carney was now 200 meters. 100 meters. The captain of the Carney closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Brace for impact. Then, the submerged contact did not hit the ship. It did not explode. At 50 meters from the Carney's hull, the high-speed object suddenly breached the surface. It was a small, sleek cylinder of black carbon fiber. It shot 10 feet into the air, hovered for a heartbeat on a pulse of blue flame, and then fell silently into the water. Every screen in the American Combat Information Center went black. Every light on the bridge flickered and died. The hum of the engines vanished. The ship was silent. 8:31 in the morning. The U.S.S. Carney was a dead weight in the water. No radar, no sonar, no weapons. The captain looked out at the Iranian swarm. The boats had stopped. They were sitting idle in the water, their engines cut. In the sky, the Triton drone and the Zolfaqar-S leveled off and began to fly slowly toward the Iranian coast. The morning was silent. The peak had passed, but the world had changed. 8:32 in the morning. The Persian Gulf. The silence on the bridge of the U.S.S. Carney was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. The captain reached for the internal telephone. It was dead. He looked at the digital compass. One of the most powerful warships in the American fleet had been reduced to a 6,900-ton piece of floating steel. The screen was a frozen gray rectangle. The tactical action officer looked up from his dark console. The entire network is down, sir. Not just the radar. Everything. It is like the ship's brain was wiped clean. Then, the pivot happened. The radar operator at the backup station pointed toward the horizon. Sir, look at the water. Where the Tomahawk went down. The captain raised his binoculars. The high-resolution optics were gone, but the glass was clear. 2 miles away, where the stolen Tomahawk had supposedly disappeared into the sea clutter, a massive shape was rising. It was not a missile. It was a buoy. A bright orange, modular container was bobbing in the swells. It was broadcasting a powerful, wide-spectrum signal. The captain's jaw tightened. The Tomahawk was a ghost. It never flew to the coast. 8:35 in the morning. Inside the Iranian command bunker. The screens in the bunker did not show a victory celebration. They showed a map of the entire Persian Gulf. The pulsing data lines that had connected the American assets were gone. In their place was a single, massive circle of interference. Colonel Reza turned to his technician. Is it functioning? The technician stared at his terminal. Sir, we have a problem. The Tomahawk signal. The one we were using to override the Triton. It has changed. Changed how? Reza asked. It is no longer our code, the technician said. His voice was trembling. The American missile we captured. It was not a Block 5. It was a specialized electronic lure. It was designed to be captured. 8:37 in the morning. The sky over the Gulf. The Iranian Zolfaqar-S interceptor, which had been leading the captured American Triton toward the coast, suddenly shuddered. Its delta wings dipped. It began to fly in a tight, uncontrolled circle. The Triton, once a captive, suddenly leveled its wings. Its lights flashed green. It was back under American control. The pilot in the remote trailer saw his screens come back to life. Control. I have the bird back. But the Iranian interceptor, it is responding to my commands. I am not flying the Triton. I am flying both of them. The pivot was complete. The Americans had not lost their missile. They had used it as a delivery vehicle for a logic virus. By allowing the Iranians to reverse engineer the Tomahawk's code, the Pentagon had invited them to build that same code into their most advanced drones. The Persepolis Protocol was not an Iranian victory. It was an American trap. 8:39 in the morning. On the U.S.S. Carney, the lights flickered and surged back to life. The hum of the gas turbines returned. The radar screens bloomed with color. The submerged contact that had breached the surface and disabled the ship was not a weapon. It was a short-range recovery pulse. It had temporarily rebooted the ship's systems to purge the Iranian interference. The tactical action officer gasped. Sir, we have the swarm on radar. They are dead in the water. Every single Iranian boat. Their engines are stalled. Their radios are silent. The captain looked at the screen. The 80 Iranian boats were drifting. The Zolfaqar-S was circling the Triton like a loyal dog. The power had shifted back, but the mystery was only beginning. They thought they were the ones reverse engineering us, the captain whispered. But we gave them the blueprints to their own defeat. The morning air was still, but the high-speed chase was over. 8:35 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the U.S.S. Carney. The air conditioning hummed back to life, pulling the smell of ozone from the room. The tactical action officer stared at the primary display. The 80 red triangles representing the Iranian swarm were still there. They were drifting with the current, scattering like leaves on a pond. The TAO spoke into his headset. All stations, report status. Engineering is back online, a voice replied. Main engines at 5%. Building pressure. Sensors are clean, the radar operator said. The interference is gone. Sir, I am tracking the Triton. It is moving away from the coast. And it is not alone. The captain stood behind the radar station. The Iranian interceptor. Is it still on our wing? Yes, sir, the operator said. It is like they are tethered by an invisible rope. The Iranian command has lost control of their own stealth drone. 8:40 in the morning. Inside the Iranian command bunker. The room was a scene of controlled panic. Colonel Reza stood over the lead technician. Every command they sent to the Zolfaqar-S was being bounced back. The logic viruses had not just taken over the interceptor. It was using the interceptor as a relay to attack the bunker's own internal network. The technician's fingers flew across the keyboard. I cannot isolate the breach. The virus is using our own encryption to lock us out. It is like the American Tomahawk was a Trojan horse filled with a digital mirror. Everything we do to them, we are doing to ourselves. Colonel Reza looked at the tactical map. His swarm of fast boats was silent. His most advanced drone was being led away like a prisoner. Disconnect the primary uplink. Shut down the entire coastal array. We must stop the spread before it reaches the central command in Tehran. Sir, the technician said, his face pale. If we shut down the array, we lose all eyes on the Gulf. We will be blind. We are already blind, Reza replied. The Americans didn't just counter our move. They let us think we were winning, so we would open our doors to them. Disconnect. Now, 8:45 in the morning. On the bridge of the U.S.S. Carney, the captain watched the horizon through his binoculars. The orange buoy was still bobbing in the water 2 miles away. It was the source of the reboot pulse. It was also the anchor for the entire operation. The bridge-to-bridge radio crackled. It was the Iranian Coast Guard, American vessel. This is Iranian patrol. We have a technical emergency. All our vessels are non-responsive, requesting you maintain your distance. The captain picked up the handset. Iranian patrol. This is U.S.S. Carney. We acknowledge your emergency. We are remaining in international waters. We are currently recovering our assets. Do you require medical assistance? A long pause. The Iranian officer responded. Negative. We require no assistance. Just stay back. The captain put the handset down. He looked at the TAO. They are terrified. They spent years building a weapon they thought could steal our technology. Now they realized we gave it to them on purpose. Every piece of reverse-engineered gear they have is now a potential backdoor for our intelligence. The tension had not vanished, but the nature of the crisis had changed. It was no longer a battle of missiles and torpedoes. It was a battle of reassessment. Both sides were now realizing that the digital world was a far more dangerous place than the physical one. The Triton and its captive Iranian shadow reached 20,000 feet. They were heading south, toward the safety of the carrier strike group. The mystery isn't what they built, the captain said. The mystery is how long we've been waiting to take it from them. 9 o'clock in the morning. The Combat Direction Center of the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln. The Admiral stood in the center of the room. The blue light of the tactical displays reflected off his silver hair. The crisis had entered a strange and quiet phase. On the primary screen, the icon for the American Triton drone was moving steadily south. Tucked into its wing was the Iranian Zolfaqar-S. It was a sight no one in the room had ever expected to see. A top-secret Iranian stealth asset was being flown toward an American carrier by an American pilot. The admiral looked at his chief of staff. "What is the status of the Iranian swarm?" "They are starting to recover, sir," the chief of staff replied. "We are seeing some of the fast boats restarting their engines, but they are not moving toward the Carney. They are heading back to port. It looks like they are pulling everything back to the coast." "And the Tomahawk?" the admiral asked. "The buoy has been recovered by a Navy SEAL team in a rigid-hull inflatable boat," the chief said. "It was not a Tomahawk. It was a submersible decoy. It carried a high-gain antenna and a pre-programmed logic burst. The entire missile flight was a digital projection." The Iranians were hacking a shadow. 9:10 in the morning. Inside the Iranian command bunker, the room was dark. The main screens had been powered down to prevent the virus from jumping to the regional power grid. Technicians worked by the light of battery-powered lanterns. They were using standalone laptops that were not connected to any network. Colonel Reza sat in his chair. He was staring at a printed circuit board that had been pulled from a prototype Iranian guidance system. It was based on the wreckage of a Tomahawk recovered 3 years ago. He now realized that the wreckage had been left for them to find. The flaws they had discovered in the American encryption were not mistakes. They were invitations. The technician approached him. "Sir, we have analyzed the last data packet from the Zolfaqar-S. The American virus did not just lock us out. It was downloading our entire sensor database for the last 6 months. They were not just taking our drone. They were using it to vacuum our intelligence files." Reza did not look up. "They didn't just reverse engineer our hardware. They reverse engineered our ambition. They knew exactly how we would try to steal their technology. They built a trap that looked like a prize." "What do we do about the interceptor?" the technician asked. "It is still flying with their drone. If they land it in Bahrain, they will have our stealth coding. They will have our engine data. We cannot stop it," Reza said. "If we fire a missile at it, we will hit the American drone. That would give them the excuse they need to strike our coastal batteries. We have to let it go." 9:15 in the morning. The U.S.S. Carney was now moving at 10 knots, escorting the SEAL team and the decoy buoy back to the main fleet. The tension in the air was thick, but the immediate threat of combat had faded. The Iranian boats were no longer a swarm, they were a broken formation. The captain of the Carney stood on the bridge. He watched the Triton and the Zolfaqar-S through his binoculars until they were just 2 tiny specks in the high blue sky. "Sir," the tactical action officer said, "we are receiving a message from 5th Fleet. The mission is classified as a total success. We are to maintain a high readiness posture, but we are cleared to resume normal patrol." The captain nodded. "A success. We proved that we can turn their own weapons against them, but we also showed them our hand. They won't make this mistake again." He looked at the empty sea where the swarm had been. The mystery was deepening. The Iranians had built something alarming, but the Americans had built something even more subtle. The technology war was no longer about who had the fastest missile. It was about who owned the thoughts of the machine. 9:20 in the morning. The edge of Iranian territorial waters. The horizon was empty. The 80 fast boats of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had vanished back into the jagged coastline of the Jask Peninsula. On the bridge of the U.S.S. Carney, the high-pitched whine of the gas turbines settled into a steady, rhythmic hum. The ship was no longer a target, it was a witness. The tactical action officer adjusted his headset. "Captain, the Triton and the Shadow contact are now 5 minutes from the carrier's inner screen. The Lincoln has launched 2 more Super Hornets to provide a close escort. The Iranians have completely powered down their coastal tracking radars." The captain leaned against the bridge console. "They are not just powered down, they are scrubbing their servers. They know that if that virus is as good as the analysts say, it is currently eating its way through their entire air defense network." There was no celebration on the bridge. There were no cheers. The crew moved with the quiet, practiced efficiency of professionals who had seen how close the world had come to the edge. The technical victory was absolute, but the strategic reality was somber. The Americans had effectively neutralized Iran's most advanced electronic warfare project, but in doing so, they had revealed a capability they could never use the same way again. 9:25 in the morning. Inside the Iranian command bunker, Colonel Reza stood in the center of the dark room. He watched as soldiers moved from station to station, physically pulling hard drives from their slots and placing them in lead-lined bags. The air was hot without the cooling systems. The silence was heavy. The lead technician approached him. The Americans have reached their fleet. The Zolfaqar-S has lowered its landing gear. It is responding to the Lincoln's automated landing system. We have lost our most advanced prototype, and they have the source code. Reza looked at the empty screens. They do not just have the code. They have the proof that our ambition exceeded our security. We spent 5 years trying to steal their past. They spent 5 years giving it to us so they could own our future. Shall we prepare a statement of protest? The technician asked. They have seized an Iranian sovereign asset in international airspace. No, Reza said. His voice was tired. There will be no protest. To protest is to admit we were hacked. We will tell the world. It was a scheduled joint technology demonstration that went exactly as planned. We will save face while we burn our remaining systems to the ground. 9:30 in the morning. The U.S.S. Carney made a wide, slow turn to the south. The mission was over. The decoy buoy, the source of the Trojan Tomahawk signal, sat in a secure locker below decks, waiting for transport to a laboratory in Maryland. The captain looked out at the water. The Persian Gulf looked exactly as it had 2 hours ago. The same green water, the same orange sun, the same morning. But the invisible architecture of the region had been dismantled and rebuilt in the span of 90 minutes. Sir, the TAO said, the Lincoln reports the Zolfaqar-S has touched down on the flight deck. It is secure. The Admiral is calling it a clean recovery. Copy that, the captain said. Set condition 3 across the ship. Let the crew get some breakfast. We are heading home. The crisis had resolved not with a bang, but with a series of silent, digital surrenders. There was no victory parade. There was only the quiet, cold realization that in modern warfare, the most dangerous weapon is the one you think you have stolen. 3 days later. The Pentagon. Washington, D.C. The conference room was windowless and silent. A group of high-ranking officers and intelligence analysts sat around a mahogany table. On the wall, a series of high-resolution photographs showed the Iranian Zolfaqar-S sitting in a hangar on the U.S.S. Abraham Lincoln. The drone had been dismantled. Its internal components were laid out on white tables, like the remains of a prehistoric bird. A senior analyst from the Office of Naval Intelligence stood up. He pointed a laser at a small, silver box on the screen. This is the primary flight control computer. As we suspected, it is a near-perfect replica of the processor used in our Tomahawk Block IV. They didn't just copy the architecture. They copied the mistakes we left in the code back in 2018. The admiral at the head of the table leaned forward. And the reverse engineering? How far did they get? They got exactly as far as we wanted them to, the analyst replied. They believed they had found a way to bypass our encryption. In reality, they had integrated a series of logic gates that acted as a two-way street. Every time they tried to hack one of our missiles, they were actually uploading their own location and system status to our servers. The Persepolis Protocol was a self-licking ice cream cone for our intelligence gathering. 1 week later, strategic level analysis. The tactical aftermath was clear. The United States had recovered an intact, state-of-the-art Iranian stealth drone without firing a single shot. But the strategic implications were more complex. Military analysts would later agree that this encounter redefined the electronic umbrella of the Middle East. The Iranian Tomahawk was no longer a threat. It was a liability. Every piece of equipment Iran had built using that stolen data was now compromised. They were forced to ground their entire fleet of advanced drones. Their coastal defense network was being rebuilt from scratch. The cost was billions of dollars and years of lost research. In Tehran, the political fallout was quiet but severe. Several high-ranking officers in the Revolutionary Guard were reassigned. Colonel Reza was not among them. He was kept in his position, but his department was stripped of its funding. The Iranians had learned a hard lesson. In the age of cyber-physical systems, a captured weapon is often a gift from Troy. The Pentagon's report concluded that the success of the operation relied on human psychology as much as software. The Iranians wanted to believe they had outsmarted the Americans. They wanted to believe their reverse engineering was superior. That desire created a blind spot large enough to fly a drone through. The strategic assessment was finalized. The Gulf returned to its usual state of tense observation. But beneath the surface, the rules had changed. The kinetic battle for the waves had been replaced by a silent war for the code that controlled them. The U.S.S. Carney was already back on patrol. Its crew was focused on the horizon. They knew that while they had won this round, the next one would not be fought with Trojan horses. It would be fought with something new. 1 month later, the National War College, Washington, D.C. A small group of military students and senior intelligence officers gathered in a darkened lecture hall. On the screen was a single image of the Persian Gulf at sunrise. It was a peaceful scene. The lecturer did not show maps of troop movements or satellite photos of missile silos. He showed a graph of code integrity and a map of signal propagation. This was the final strategic briefing on the Persepolis Protocol. The strategic assessment was clear. The incident in the Gulf had changed the definition of a secured border. In the 20th century, a nation was safe if its radars could see a missile and its guns could shoot it down. In the 21st century, safety was a matter of digital sovereignty. The Iranians had built a wall of electronic sensors and reverse-engineered weapons. They believed they were untouchable because they had mastered the physical technology of their rivals. But the Americans had proved that a wall is only as strong as the software that runs it. The briefing noted that the U.S.S. Carney and the Abraham Lincoln had demonstrated a new kind of power. The analysts called it algorithmic deterrence. It was the ability to win a battle before the first shot was fired by corrupting the logic of the enemy. By allowing the Iranians to reverse engineer the Tomahawk missile, the United States had turned the Iranian military into a massive, unwitting laboratory for American software. Every new drone Iran built, every new radar they installed, and every encrypted radio they used was effectively an extension of the American network. The lecturer paused, the blue light of the screen reflecting off his face. He spoke about the risk. Algorithmic deterrence is a single-use weapon. The moment the Iranian command realized their systems were compromised, the advantage began to evaporate. They were already moving toward a new strategy. They were shifting away from complex digital systems and returning to simpler, closed-loop technology that could not be hacked from the outside. The age of the smart battlefield was moving toward a new era of hardened isolation. Thousands of miles away, the Persian Gulf remained a theater of constant, grinding tension. The U.S.S. Carney continued its patrol through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian fast boats had returned to the water, but they remained at a significant distance. The sky was empty of drones for now. Both sides were reassessing the value of their technology. The capture of the Zolfaqar-S interceptor had been a massive intelligence windfall for the Pentagon, but it had also served as a final warning. The final lesson of the Persepolis Protocol was philosophical. It reminded both nations that the most advanced weapons are also the most vulnerable. A cruise missile is a marvel of engineering, but it is also a collection of millions of lines of code. If an adversary can change just one line, they can change the course of history. The most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys. It is the one that obeys a different master. Modern warfare is no longer decided by who has the biggest gun or the fastest jet. It is decided by who understands the machine better than the machine understands itself. The morning in the Gulf was quiet once again. The salt air was still. But in the deep, silent world of the data streams, the war never ended. It only waited for the next handshake. The record of the Persepolis Protocol. was filed away in the archives of the Pentagon. It was marked with a single sentence of military analysis: "The battle for the future will not be fought for land or sea. It will be fought for the mind of the machine."